In a world full of bad news, this podcast is a source of good news, real talk, and real inspiration. On this show, you'll hear stories of growth, legacy, and entrepreneurship. Everyday people who overcome real challenges to build something meaningful. My name is Stephen Padernacht, third generation Bronx born and raised in the real estate game. This is the Padernacht Podcast, brick by brick. Today's guest is John Zanzarella. In this episode, we talk about the golf event that changed his career. That golf course has another significance to you, if I'm correct, right? Like you ended up meeting a business partner there at some point?
Yeah, when I met Chris and he was starting his company, I mean, he was just full of life and enthusiasm, and I gravitated towards that. And so Chris was doing digital marketing. I introduced him to the law firm to see if they could use his digital marketing. The beginning of 6 months of us building that event together, and it ultimately led to us partnering together in the agency. We spent so much of our time back in 2010 explaining to people why social media was important. Like no one got it, and everyone, well, that's not how social works, right?
Yeah.
You need to build up content, and there's strategy, and there's customer acquisition, and we had speakers from Pepsi and MasterCard and some really big businesses.
Does AI play a big part in your industry now?
Yes, it's changed our industry. I use Gemini a lot because most of my stuff is Google based, and I feel like they're have a product that's improving quite a bit. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but it's definitely changing the industry I'm in quite a bit.
Are you truly fulfilled with what you're doing right now?
No, and that's when you hear me talk to the Ace guys, I think that's the funniest thing. Dave will be talking about challenges that he's having with what he's building, but I will find something that checks a little bit more of those boxes, and that's why I appreciate a lot of the guys that we know and network with because they are really passionate.
Welcome everybody back to the Padernacht Podcast. Today's guest is John Zanzarella. John has built a career across marketing, sales, entrepreneurship, and revenue leadership, ultimately earning his way into the CRO seat. In this episode, we talk about the golf event that changed his career, the power of relationships and random meetings, what it's like to go through an acquisition hire, how he thinks about money and investing, and the real challenge of being present at home while still chasing professional goals. So welcome, my man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
My pleasure, bro. We've been talking about this for a while.
Yes.
I think it's probably going on a year or so. We've been talking about getting together and having this conversation on camera.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. When I met you, I remember some of our early conversations. You were talking about starting a podcast. And not only man of your word, you did it, and it's been growing. And, once I saw you getting some momentum and sticking with it, I was just like raising my hand. Hey, when can I join? But no, I know timing wasn't always the easiest, so I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, dude, it's really it makes it so much easier when I'm sitting across from somebody that I actually, and I don't want to say this to any of my other guests, but that I know outside of here, and that this is not our first conversation. Yeah. You can imagine sitting across from somebody that you don't know and trying to have that conversation and the icebreaker. So it makes it a lot easier. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course.
I want to just kind of tell your story a little bit, right? So like most people meet you now as Chief Revenue Officer.
Yep.
But like, what was the kid version of you like? Like, what did you think your career was going to be? Did you know that this was where you wanted to go? Or like, what was the early years like for you?
Yeah, so I grew up in Ossining in Westchester, and my parents ran a small business. So I very much grew up in a business environment. Now, I say my dad was the OG work from home because they ran it out of our house. It was a media buying and planning business. He's had it for over 30 years. And so from 10, 11 years old, I would be answering the phone. There was one phone that if that rang, you answered Zanzarella Marketing. And we used to have the physical notepad there, and I'd take a message from my dad. And, that was just how we operated. And early on, I wanted to be a sports agent. I liked the concept. This is pre-Ari Gold. Like, I liked the idea of working with athletes. I had an opportunity to go to an event when I was young with David Falk, who was Michael Jordan's agent. And, that was the path I wanted to be on. But I always gravitated towards business. I had, the lemonade stand, the candy stand, all those things growing up. And my dad was, a business owner, but really his background was in sales. And so I absorbed a lot of, I think, how he operated over those years. And, ultimately, I don't think I had CRO in mind when I was a kid, but I'm not surprised that I went down some of the path that I did.
And you were Fairfield University, right?
Yep.
I don't know if we've talked about this. My brother went to Fairfield
Oh, no,
also.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. My older brother Daniel went to Fairfield, so I spent some time out there.
Yep.
I remember he brought me out there for an LL Cool J concert.
Oh, yeah.
And my brothers are older than me. My oldest brother's 7 years older than me, and Daniel, who went to Fairfield, is 5 years older than me. So you can imagine he's a sophomore in college. I was like barely even. I don't even think I was in high school at that time. So like just going out there and being around Fairfield University, like it was really a cool experience. What did you study there when you were in Fairfield? Was it business?
Yes, I was a marketing major. I was an information systems minor, so a little bit on the technology side of things. And I loved my 4 years there. School was not my primary focus, as my grades and my parents will tell you. But from a social standpoint, I had a great time. I went with a handful of kids that I knew from high school, and I always think even today, like I would love for one of my kids to go to Fairfield because it's a beautiful campus. It's not so far away, and the school has really done well over the years.
Yeah, I really enjoyed. So my brother was there. He lived off campus, and I'll never forget. I don't know why I remember this, but like they had an inflatable pool on their like deck outside, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And it was like a party, but still like what the hell was his major? I mean, he ended up to study law, but I don't know what his major was. But it was just such a great campus, and his friend group from college, he's still very close with to this day.
Yeah, same. I just had dinner with my college roommates. One was in from Arizona, and so we got together a few weeks ago, and you just, you spend 2 hours telling stories, but that's the purpose of it, I think, is you're meeting people who end up, being people that you network with. A lot of people I went to school with ended up doing very well in business. Many of them still live in the area, which is nice. Now you get to see their families grow. Yep. Fairfield's a nice area to raise a family, so some of them are still local. And yeah, we didn't appreciate it then, but we look back on it very fondly.
And were you worked, correct me if I'm wrong, but you worked on a golf course?
Yes. Yeah. So growing up, high school and college, my summer job was caddying. And, I look back on it, I was like, that was the best job. You're outside, it was early wake ups back then, but you're getting paid in cash, you're getting paid well. You are, again, sort of rubbing elbows with really successful people, right? I worked at a private course in Purchase. So, to be a member there, you were doing pretty well for yourself. And that was great exposure at a young age for someone who wanted to be successful to see what that next level looked like. Yeah. The parking lot was filled with nice cars. The people had nice houses. They weren't always the nicest people, and I thought that was interesting, especially to their caddies. But I got a taste for the country club life.
And so you were there, you said high school and college. So you were there, what, 6, 7, 8 years?
Yeah, probably about 7 years.
And that golf course has another significance to you, if I'm correct, right? Like you ended up meeting a business partner there at some point?
Yeah, so not exactly. So I because I grew up playing golf and I caddied, when I got my first job at a school, which was at a law firm, and that was, again, just the power of networking. I graduated in 2008. It was right as the economy was about to collapse. At Fairfield, we had a lot of finance major friends. Few of them were working at Lehman Brothers, and within 3 months, that business collapsed and they were out of jobs. So it was a really interesting perspective. You go to college for 4 years with the goal of getting a job, and then within a few months, I saw all these people losing their jobs. And it wasn't my friends who were working for 3 months. It was the partner at Lehman Brothers who'd been there 20 years and was losing his job. And so that gave me a little bit of a push towards entrepreneurship, I think. But at that law firm, one of their big client events was at Pinehurst, North Carolina, which is like the mecca for golfers. They have the famous Pinehurst #2, which is where the U.S. Open is played every so many years, and they have 8 or 9 other courses on the property. Now, at that time, I was junior, but most of my counterparts were women, and they had no interest in going to do a golf event. So I raised my hand, and they said, hey, absolutely, you can come and run the event. At that time, I had met a gentleman. His name was Chris Dessi. He had left a successful sales job to start his own business. This is back in 2010. And when I met him, he was just so full of life. It was very different. If you walked into my law firm, you'd talk to attorneys who had been there a long time, and a lot of them would say, you don't want to be an attorney, or I don't want my kids to be attorneys. It wasn't something that they, some of them really loved it, but a lot of them, it was just a job, and it was the path that life took them down. Yep. When I met Chris and he was starting his company, I mean, he was just full of life and enthusiasm, and I gravitated towards that. And so Chris was doing digital marketing. I introduced him to the law firm to see if they could use his digital marketing. They were, not very forward thinking when it came to technology and digital. And
what year is this we're talking?
This is 2010.
Okay.
2011. I had stood up their LinkedIn account for them and their blog. Like this is, dating myself a little bit. And Chris was coming in and talking about content strategy and a lot of the things that we're seeing, be popular today. And so I got him an invite to the event at Pinehurst as a goal for him to help sell some of the attorneys on doing their digital media. And what really happened was he got a chance to see me run an event. And part of my dad's business growing up was running events. He ran events and did the media planning for many local and some not so local events. And so when he saw that, he came to me and he said, look, I want to do an event called the Westchester Digital Summit. I think instead of getting, Nancy, who worked in real estate last year, but now she's a social media expert, to come and speak, we want to get Gary Vaynerchuk to speak and someone from Facebook to speak. And I can get the speakers there, but I need someone to execute on the event. And so that was the beginning of 6 months of us building that event together. And it ultimately led to us partnering together in the agency.
Interesting. So Gary Vaynerchuk, he was able to get Gary V there?
Yeah. And Chris and Gary knew each other. Chris has a great story where when he was trying to break into social media, he saw Gary speak. It made a big impact on him. And he drove out to Jersey. Gary had the family wine library back then. And he said, hey, Gary, I want to get into social media. And Gary said, well, I just started an agency. This is the beginning of Vayner with a couple of my brother and some of his friends. You're a dad in Chappaqua. Like, I can't pay you, but go do social media and come back to me.
Yeah.
And I took that lesson with me for a long time. It's like, hey, if you want to start a podcast, go do it.
Yeah.
And then come back to me. And so Chris started a blog called Dadzilla. He was a new dad at the time. And he bought a URL called facebookshouldhireme.com. And he didn't get a job at Facebook, but he got picked up in some news articles about it. And long story short, he ended up getting a job at a company called Buddy Media. They were one of the original software solutions for companies who wanted to advertise on Facebook. Chris was able to connect Gary to Buddy Media. He ended up being an investor. Buddy exited to Salesforce. Gary did really well. So him and Chris kind of knew each other. And that first year, Gary did us a solid on his speaking fee and came and keynoted the event at the county center. And it was pretty tremendous for the area. Gary was like on this part of his rise to stardom and what he is today then. But certainly for an area that was learning about digital marketing and social media, to have someone like that come in was a big deal.
What was the whole purpose of Westchester? Was it Westchester Digital?
Yep. Digital Summit.
Digital Summit.
Yeah.
So tell me what the purpose of tell me what the overall reason as to why Chris wanted to do this and why you thought it was so important.
I think selfishly, having an agency, we spent so much of our time back in 2010 explaining to people why social media was important. Like, no one got it. And everyone, you guys will appreciate this. You'd start working with them and they wanted to see, hey, why don't we have all these leads in 2 weeks? Well, that's not how social works, right?
Yeah.
You need to build up content, and there's strategy and there's customer acquisition. And so we thought, hey, if we could get some of the people really doing this, we had speakers from Pepsi and MasterCard and some really big businesses, we can educate the audience, we can get them excited about what we're doing, and then we can generate some leads from it. And we can, turn that into a revenue generator for us. And we didn't do a great job of selling ourselves during the event. We made it more about the speakers and the sponsors. But that was the idea behind it, was that if everyone got excited about what we were doing, it might turn into some business for us.
Interesting. And what made you decide to take the jump and leave the secure job position and now go and on that entrepreneurial path? I mean, I know obviously you grew up in a household that was very entrepreneurial, but taking that leap of faith is not something that a lot of people would do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, took a pay cut, healthcare, took a step back, like all of those things were not there. But really at that point in my life, I was 27. It's exactly what I was looking for, right? I wanted to be excited about what I was doing every day. I had a great thing going at the law firm. I worked with a lot of really good people, but there just wasn't really a path forward for me the way I wanted to. And I figured, hey, if I'm ever going to take a shot, now's the time to do it. This is really exciting stuff with social media and marketing companies that way. My background was in marketing, so it was, to me, the next evolution of that. And, we took a leap of faith and went and did it.
There's a hashtag that I kept seeing reoccurring on your social media, and it was take random meetings.
Yeah.
Explain to me the significance of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's another one, I learned from Chris, but he was a random meeting. I had somebody who worked with me at the law firm who went to grammar school with Chris in Mayapack. And he was like, hey, you should meet this guy. I'll never forget when I met Chris. It was, it's probably coming up on our anniversary because it was right after Memorial Day. And I had just gotten out of a 3 or 4 year relationship. And I was talking to him, and like the first thing he said to me was like, dude, you just got out of this relationship. I was still like a little bummed about it. And he was like, you're going to embark on the best few years of your life right now. He's like, you're tall, you're handsome. He's like, this is going to be amazing. He just really spoke life into me. And not just the business relationship we had, but our journey together taught me so many things. And that was a random meeting. And since then, I've realized that, your network is your net worth, and there's a correlation there. Yep. I don't necessarily, even as I've gotten, now with kids and a bigger job, like your time is more precious, and maybe I don't take as many as I want to, but I definitely still try to make some time and be intentional about networking. And, it's funny, like that's kind of how we met, right?
Yeah.
So I think back on that year, it was 2022. I'm wearing the Ace shirt right now. We're just getting out of the COVID fog. And one of my goals when we hit January of that year was, hey, I want to get back into networking. I want to be more intentional. And at that time, I was seeing Brian Mazza all over Instagram. Yep. I was following Sahil Bloom. And the one thing those two had in common was they went to the same gym in Pelham.
Yep.
And I live in Stamford. Pelham's not convenient, but I was like, you know what? I need to be in an environment with these dudes. Like they are speaking the right message. They're physically fit as they're getting older. They're prioritizing their health and wellness.
Yep.
And I start going to that gym, and I meet you, and I meet Todd, and I meet so many amazing people that have come from that. And that's, that's the modern version. It's a little bit more intentional than random meetings, but making sure those meetings are still happening.
Well, there's a difference between taking random meetings and putting yourself intentionally in different positions. So like what you just explained, listen, I ended up at the Body Blueprint because, again, just kind of full circle. I'm not sure if you know Jay LaKyle, Jumpman Jay?
Yep.
So he's the one who recommended, at the time, it was CrossFit Westchester to me. And then I ended up going there. And then from there, I ended up staying there up until, just a couple months ago when I moved up to Portchester. So my wife, got me a membership at Lifetime. So, but I I know Jay from grammar school. He put me into CrossFit Westchester. From CrossFit Westchester, I became friends with Tommy and Vinny and Luch and everybody there. And then Tommy had posted that he was doing an outdoor workout at Ace.
Right.
And I had always wanted the cold plunge. This is before they had the cold plunge there. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go try it out. And I went there, and that's when I met Dave, Sean, and then started going to dinners. And then obviously we had met and gotten closer, and then we started seeing each other at the gym. And then look at us now.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think as you grow and get older, that intentional networking is really important, because putting myself in that room, putting myself at the first dinner. My wife went to college with Nick Menente, and so I had known him a little bit over the years, and he had reached out. I also ran into Sean at HPLT one day, and he was like, hey, you should come to this dinner we're going to. And 2 years later, I try to make as many of those dinners as I can. I've met so many great people through the ACE network. And, I look back, like if I didn't do those two things, if I didn't start going to that gym, if I didn't start going to the ACE events, my sphere of influence now would be totally different.
Yeah. And better, worse, or indifferent. Like it's just, I personally feel like at this stage in my life, I mean, I'm 44, so I try to put myself in positions where whatever time that I spend outside of my wife and the family is growing growing myself personally, my personal development and my health, and obviously by default, my wealth as well. Yeah. And I think that you and I have a lot of that in common. You are, I didn't realize this, but you have a pretty decent history when it comes to CrossFit also.
Yeah.
I did not know that until I went down my rabbit hole of your Instagram. And I'm like, yo, this dude's been doing CrossFit forever.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to tell if you saw me in a CrossFit workout. But so again, this world's colliding. Chris, when I started working with him, he will tell you he was, he had 2 kids about my kid's age now, and he had gotten sort of out of the gym and out of fitness. And I came in, 27-year-old, no kids. I was working out all the time. And I think I encouraged him to get back into it. And what did he do? He joined CrossFit Westchester, but the one in White Plains where Chris Guerrero was the coach. And so, like everybody else who gets into CrossFit, he wouldn't stop talking about it. And it was just enough to get me, at the time, just enough to get me interested in it. I had friends locally who started going to hybrid fitness here in Stamford. Had an amazing owner, Rob Orlando. Unfortunately, he had just passed away, but that started a 7-year CrossFit journey. And basically until COVID, when, things shut down and gyms ended up moving, some gyms closed, I was definitely part of that community.
Now, one thing that I've noticed along your journey through my deep dive is that you prefer the early morning workouts.
Yes, it wasn't always that way, but as sort of life moved on, I realized that number one, I think I'm one of those people who I do better earlier in the day. Like that's where I have my focus, that's where I have my energy. That workout sets the tone for the rest of my day. And so that has been a big benefit for me. And now with kids, it's non-negotiable. If it doesn't happen in the morning, it's not going to happen. Yeah. My kids got my gene. They're early risers. So I laugh, like I have to get up so early if I want to beat them. Most mornings, now that I work out at home, they come down while I'm working out, and that's fun in and of itself. But yeah, now that's just part of it. And it's funny because, and this probably isn't the best thing, but if I don't get that workout in, like everyone knows it. Like my wife can tell by 10 a.m. that I haven't got my workout in because everything in my mind is going, all right, where can I now squeeze it in throughout the day? So it's I'm in a good rhythm with that now.
That quality, or I'm the same exact way. If I don't work out in the morning, it has been truly become like habitual for me. If I don't at least move my body in the morning, my whole day is thrown off whack. And my wife says that it's like the equivalent of being like hangry. Yeah. I don't know what the expression is, but she's like, oh, you hangry because you didn't get to work out this morning? I'm like, yo, babe, you don't understand that if I don't work out, then my whole day's thrown off whack. And now I feel like I got to try to catch up later. And then I'm mad, same as you.
For sure.
Because I'm not going to want to go after work. And then I'm mentally drained. So I could relate to that 100%. How is it balancing, with little ones and staying active?
Yeah, it's
because I imagine that there's nights where you're not sleeping fully and then you're getting up in the morning. Like, how does that?
Like every night.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, the reality is having that foundation built before you have kids is really helpful because it wasn't like I had to make this dramatic switch. The other thing that's really important is I have a understanding wife because she knows that there are many times where she's getting much less sleep than I am, but she's still working with me to prioritize that first workout, and she knows, and we have a really good thing going on there. But yeah, it's great. My daughter's 6, Sophia. My son, John, is almost 4. And then we have a 5-month-old Leo at home.
Beautiful.
And so, it's there's no night that is smooth. And we're cool with that. And I wake up and usually the 2 older kids will come down with me. I'll either get them set up or they will come down while I'm working out. And they're like totally into it. You see, I post some pictures on Instagram sometimes, and it's not that I'm forcing them, but they think it's cool. They think the treadmill's cool and they see the weights and there are little ones there and they're picking them up and stuff. And, I just try to set that example. Again, I had that growing up before it was cool. My dad, old school, he used to work out. He used to walk the steps in our house with weights.
Really?
And so it would be like 8 in the morning and I hear him thumping up the steps. We didn't have a big house. It was like right next to my door, up and down with weights. He was always, as long as I can remember, waking up, exercising, stretching. And he's a big golfer. So in golf, if you can be flexible, you can play that game for a long time. He's 82 now. He's playing golf. He's shooting his age, but he did plant a seed in me around early workouts and the importance of it.
One of the things that you and I, you had mentioned this the other day when you texted me, is that our fathers have been major influences on us. What do you think, if you had to sum it up in maybe a sentence or two, what is the best advice your father has given you?
Yeah. I mean, so much of it is example. And that's how I think about my kids, because you put pressure on yourself to be like, hey, how can I get these messages through to them? My son today, like there were times we had to check his ears because we didn't know if he was listening to anything. He would just do the opposite of what you said. But my dad always set that example, his work ethic, the physical fitness stuff, even just, how he interacted with my mom. I think he set a great example that I gravitated towards. But there was one thing in particular he said to me. And when I got my job at the law firm, it was one of those roles where, because there wasn't a big marketing department, I was put into meetings with senior attorneys like pretty quickly. And it was the same feeling I had in college where, you wouldn't do the homework. The teacher would call on you and you'd be like, oh no, here we go again. Or worse, you didn't want them to call on you. They'd be calling on somebody. And I'd get in these meetings, I just wouldn't know what they're talking about. And it made me feel like it really killed my confidence. My dad said to me, like, look, not everyone is going to know about sports, which is what I was into at the time. And he said, if you read books, you're going to learn things and you'll be able to relate to more people.
Yeah.
And so at that time, he had told me that years before I started listening to it. But at that time I said, I'm going to take him up on it. I started listening to audiobooks. And all of a sudden I found out that even if it was an attorney who never watched a single sport, I could find something to relate with them on. And if I could relate to them, it would buy me enough time to understand what they were talking about and get back in, a spot where we could work together. And so that really put me in a spot where reading and not just, focusing on the things that I liked, but trying to get a little bit more well-rounded for the people I'd end up meeting, really stayed with me.
I talk about this a lot, but that is the how to win friends and influence people sort of strategy, right? Like learn how to relate to somebody, talk about things that they like, and then you'll get them to like you. I mean, that's exactly what your father was, and telling you about. And my father taught me a lot about that as well. My dad had me, I remember vividly, we're sitting in the Riverdale Diner on the corner of Broadway and 238th Street. And that was my dad's like office space, right? Like it would be like, all right, cool. So now when I went out to eat with him, it was like we would talk business. So he took the back of the, like the placemats in the diner, and he wrote down like a list of like 10 different people, like Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Jackson, John F. Kennedy, all of these different people. He was like, go study the biographies of these people, and you will learn more about business and life than you will in any school that you go to. And from that moment on, I was like, all right, if my dad's telling me this, let me go start exploring it. So then at that point, I'm thinking, YouTube wasn't so big. Right. YouTube wasn't even really out at this time. So then I would just like catch like random like History Channel or whatever it may be. And then now that he's gone, I go back to like, watching the History Channel. My wife and the kids joke with me all the time. Like, we're not watching a history movie tonight, Steve. I'm like, all right, whatever. But those people's biographies, like the lessons that my father was trying to teach me, he couldn't necessarily tell me, but by going and watching other people, it allowed me the ability to learn them, what he was trying to show me.
For sure. Yeah, my dad wrote me, he wrote me a letter that I still have framed in my office before my first day of my first job.
And that's awesome.
This version of it was very, again, just like forward thinking. It was talking about treating everybody the same, not talking about certain subjects at work because it might be off-putting to people. Even if it's not my job, if there's garbage on the ground, pick it up and put it in the garbage. Those sorts of things that really resonated with me. And then before I started working with Chris, he wrote me another letter. And this one, was really interesting because he basically said, hey, this is the first job I think that you're really going to be in a sales role, and just how important it is to be able to sell, and why no matter what, everybody is really in a sales role, even if you're not. And those two letters definitely meant a lot to me.
That is such an interesting point. I say this all the time, that whether or not you're selling, whether or not you're actually quote unquote a salesperson, we're always selling. Sure. Think about it. Like, how did we get our wives? We had to sell ourselves, right? We had to sell them on our vision of life, like everything. Yeah. I worked a lot in the restaurant business, so the service business, busboy, barback, bartender, waiter. The customer's always right. You got to put yourself out there, same thing, right? Like treat the janitor the same way you treat the CEO. Yep. Like those sort of lessons that if I didn't have them, I don't know if I'd be able to be where I am right now. And listen, by no means have I hit the pinnacle of success, but I feel like I'm on the right trajectory, and I owe that all to my father.
Right, and it's not just on the right trajectory. I mean, we're at a very pivotal time right now with the way technology is advancing, right? AI, the big, sort of party line is that it's coming for people's jobs. Well, it's not coming for your job if you can sell. Yeah. And it doesn't mean you need to be in a sales job, but if you can sell, you're going to find a way to make it through and use this technology to help you as opposed to the opposite. And so, you and I, neither of us are at the pinnacle because we set big goals for ourselves. But as we go through this next transition, I have a strong sense that we'll be riding the wave as opposed to, AI is coming for what we do.
Yeah, I firmly believe that you have to dive into AI instead of running away from it. Like I'm always trying to be as forward thinking as possible. I use AI not to replace my workload, but just to make myself more efficiently. If I could sit there and say, hey, you know what, give me an email to Bob about and I list out 4 or 5 things, and then it just makes it more efficient and more professional. I could just send it off. It's better than me spending 8 minutes on writing an email.
For sure.
I can get out 5 emails in those 8 minutes. So I think that AI is not coming for our job. You're right. As long as you could sell and you could show the value and use AI instead of letting it use you.
Yeah, exactly right.
Does AI play a big part in your industry now?
Yes, it's changed our industry. And so I'm in the software industry, and if you're following the market the last 6 months, the biggest software companies in the world are seeing their stock and valuations go down because AI is basically disrupting how companies are interacting with software. Some companies are finding it easier to do things themselves with AI, and they're rolling Claude out to their entire organization. Competitors are being spun up because you could build a software tool now in a night with no coding experience, as opposed to needing all this funding to do something like that. At the same time, it's accelerating us in some ways because our engineering team is now using AI to code, and they can be more efficient. Our sales team is using AI in some instances to better pitch the product to our customers and better understand our customers. And we use an AI outbound function today that we used to have people doing. So we're able to run in some cases more efficiently and in some cases more effectively. And we're in like the second inning. Like we're still figuring this out, and the technology is changing so fast. 1 week, Anthropic's Claude is leading. The next week, OpenAI comes with a new version, and they're leading. And I use Gemini a lot because most of my stuff is Google based, and I feel like they're have a product that's improving quite a bit. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but it's definitely changing the industry I'm in quite a bit.
And the company that you are working for now, I had mentioned it in the intro. So you built this company, or you were a partner in the company with Chris.
Yep.
And then you were acquired, and then they hired you.
Yes.
So tell me just a little bit about that. Like, were you thinking there was going to be an exit, and then when you got approached for it, did you know that you were going to be hired, or like how did that come to be?
It was a little bit more intentional. We got to a point with our agency where it was professional services. We didn't have our own software or technology, and I think at some points we wish we had went down that route from the beginning. And then Chris, and he's talked about this, his father was battling ALS, and he went through a really long journey being by his side literally and going through that. And I think that gave him some perspective. And he basically said, hey, I don't think that this agency is going to be something we do forever. And he knew the CEO of PerformLine, where I am now. They used to work together back in the day. PerformLine was at an interesting point where they'd been around for a little bit, but they were pivoting to sell into financial services. They didn't really have great traction with their sales team. They knew Chris could sell, and they didn't really know me at all. I was like a package deal for Chris, and now 8 years later, I've grown to many different roles in the company. But yeah, it was an acqui-hire. They acquired our business. They didn't need the customers. They didn't need any of that, but they wanted the two of us, so they gave us roles. My first role there was director of sales and marketing operations. So I wasn't selling. I sat in between those two departments, and I spent 6 months just figuring out all the places that they had roadblocks that, could be fixed. They didn't have any sales processes. The team didn't have the right tools to sell. They didn't have the right team in place. There wasn't good communication. So I started fixing those things. And then I moved into a role where I was selling as an individual contributor. Did well there, moved into a VP of sales role, did well there. And then the company exited in 2021. We were purchased by a private equity company. That was different. Private equity runs a business very different than a founder, sure. But, still very good experience for me. And then last year I was promoted to the chief revenue officer, overseeing sales, marketing, and customer success. And it's been a great journey. I had no software experience going into it. And to have this sort of career that I've had there. Plus, when I started there, I had just gotten married. Like I've had all my kids there. Like it will go down as a really pivotal part in my story. And I've really appreciated the opportunity they gave me.
Are you truly fulfilled with what you're doing right now?
No. No, and that's when you hear me talk to the Ace guys, I think that's the funniest thing. Dave will be talking about challenges that he's having with what he's building. And I'm like, Dave, dude, on your worst day, you're literally helping people. You're changing people's lives. People are reading your book and their lives are changing. I am a hired gun. I can sell, I can lead people, I can build teams. I know how to put revenue on the board and work in a private equity structure and talk to a board and those sorts of things. But it's not particularly fulfilling work. Now, yes, it puts food on the table for our family, and we have more today than my wife and I ever had growing up, and that's awesome. But I think in my future, I will look to marry a little bit more of what I'm doing with something I can really get behind, or it'll happen in a different way where I'll continue to lead revenue organizations, but I'll be more involved in a charity or a nonprofit. I've definitely dabbled in those areas, but I will find something that checks a little bit more of those boxes. And that's why I appreciate a lot of the guys that we know and network with, because they are really passionate. And I think about my kids, and Dave had once shared with me some of the prayers that he does with his daughter. Our daughters are about the same age, and one of them was that she finds her passion and purpose early in life. And I'll be 40 this summer. I don't have my passion or purpose yet, and I'm still kind of looking for it. So yeah, it'll be to be determined.
Yeah. But I think your passions.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of figuring out how to marry the two, right? Like, and figure out, as you said, like the nonprofit, maybe continue growing, revenue over here. I personally, like, for me, I just knew early on I couldn't have a boss.
Yeah.
And that kind of, like, that decision, I found my major in college, public relations, because I didn't want to take math. I swear to God, I walked out of like pre-calculus in first class, and I went to my advisor and I said, I don't want to take this class. What major can I do? She said, take communications. Little did I know that it would be something that actually lit me up.
Right.
And then the same thing when I got out of college with a PR degree, my dad said, look, you can go do this or I could teach you. So I chose that because I didn't want to have to depend on nobody. Yeah. So knowing what I didn't want to do led me to the path that I did want to do. And it's not easy, man. Like, like sometimes I wish that like I had, the 6-figure salary and the benefits and the this and the that. Like, it's not easy being an entrepreneur. But my passion for helping people doesn't ever waver. Yeah. And that helping people find their first home, helping people navigate difficult decisions with the experience that I have is really fulfilling. Yeah. And that's what I kind of hold on to.
There is a little bit of the grass is always greener thing that happens. I talk to entrepreneurs and they share the struggles, and I still remember them. I mean, I have PTSD from when we ran our company, and early on, things happen. You're behind in accounts receivable and you don't know if you're going to make payroll, and you have to go in and tell the company, and you lose your biggest client, and how do you communicate that to your wife? All of those things I definitely don't miss. But the good news is these days you can put a lot of the things together. And we talked a little bit about investing and things like that. Like, a lot of what I've done over the years is try to have my hands in a few different things that could provide some optionality, so that even though I'm very focused on my full-time job, that if one day they don't need me, we're not starting at ground zero again.
And you have, you talk a lot about financial literacy.
Yes.
Why is that so important for you? And how have you been able to use that in your day-to-day life?
Yeah. Well, I always wanted to be wealthy. And so early on, I started reading. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. When I was super young, and that opened my eyes to a lot of things.
That's like the go-to. That's like the first go-to.
For sure. And it's certainly, you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs today and people doing cool things, and they will all be like, "Hey, I read that book a long time ago." And some people it just hits with, and other people it doesn't.
Yep.
I remember when I first graduated school, I started working with a financial planner, like right out of college, helping me figure out what 401k to invest in. And I've spent a lot of time learning about it. Now, with that being said, I work with an accountant. I work with a financial planner. I work with someone on life insurance, and I surround myself with experts. But I want to be knowledgeable enough in all of those areas, because to me, personal finance is just that. It's very personal. What your goals are going to be different than my goals.
Of course.
The problem is when you go online and there's so much information out there, all of it is very general. Some people are going to tell you whole life insurance is terrible. Some people are going to tell you it's the best thing ever. Some people are going to tell you don't want to buy a home, you want to rent. Some people will say you need to buy a home. Some people will say pay your mortgage down. Some people will say don't pay your mortgage down.
Yeah.
All of those things are right depending on what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish. And so I've always felt for my family, it's important to learn as much as I can so that I can make educated decisions and then surround ourselves with people who are really experts in those spaces and have them help guide us.
How do you pick your team? How do you pick your financial planner, your accountant, like if somebody is out there and they're like, hey, you know what? Yep. They're listening to this episode and they're like, yo, I need to get myself a team like that. How did you come to pick these people?
Yeah, largely word of mouth. Our financial planners were recommended to us probably 9 years ago through a family friend who had been working with them. What I like about them is they're fee-only financial planners. They're not tied to any sort of brokerage. They're not selling us products. They pay us. I mean, we pay them based on, basically our net worth. And so if it goes up, we pay them a little bit more. And if not, it's a flat fee. And they've been great. They are guides for us. They helped us with things like estate planning and they're not the ones who are coming to us with the fancy investment opportunities and that sort of stuff, but they make sure that we're protected. Whereas, God forbid something happens to me, tomorrow they know where all of our money is. They know all the account information. They will get on the phone with Erica and they will make a bad situation better for her right off the bat. Accountant was hard. I worked with a bunch of CPAs. That's not what I was looking for. I wanted a tax strategist. We have 3 or 4 between my wife and I, LLCs that we own either passively or my wife has an active small business. And we wanted to take advantage of some of the tax incentives that come with that. And so, again, through word of mouth and some LinkedIn connecting, we met our tax strategist. He's based in St. Louis. I've been working with him for 3 years now. He's been really helpful. I just started recommending him to some of the entrepreneurs that we know because, if you're an entrepreneur today, the tax code is really written for you. For W-2 guys, it's hard. But many people don't take advantage of all the things, especially those who are producing content. There's a lot of cool advantages out there that I've been learning about. Life insurance guy, I met him on LinkedIn, and I really liked the content that he was putting out there. I spent probably 2 years asking him questions before I ever bought a product from him. He's like the most patient person in the world, and he was great, and he introduced me to someone who does estate planning. And that's kind of the team right now. I hope that as we get wealthier, we'll need more people. A good attorney. I have someone I work with on real estate, a real estate attorney. That's helpful because we have a rental property. But yeah, it's mostly word of mouth and, being honest with ourselves that, hey, do we want to do business with these people or not? And if not being afraid to change. It's
interesting. You mentioned LinkedIn twice from that team. And I noticed looking at your LinkedIn that you do put out a nice amount of content, but you're putting out very thought-provoking content. Is that done purposely, like by your role currently, or do you do that just to kind of get it off your chest and educate?
Yeah, it's interesting. LinkedIn, my opinion on it has evolved over time. It's very much becoming Facebook, and I'm not on Facebook for that reason. But yeah, historically, I would post content on there. It's a great way to engage if you are selling with prospects and understand what's going on in their world. I also learn a lot from that information. I think they've done a very poor job over the years of making their algorithm in a way that people will really get value from it and not see some of the noise out there. So I actually don't post so much there anymore. And I see a lot of salespeople who are posting every day, and those people usually lose their jobs because it's hard to do both. It's hard to be a constant content creator and also, sell for a company. If you're doing it for your own business, totally different, right? You have to do that for your own business because you're the lead generator. But if you're working a job, you're carrying a quota, most of your days got to be out there pounding the pavement and knocking on doors, proverbially. So it's a little bit hit or miss. I actually like Substack quite a bit.
I was about to ask you about Substack.
Yeah, so I read a lot on Substack. So Instagram is really the only social media I'm on outside of LinkedIn. I did a fast during Lent, and so
I remember you texted me telling me that.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with anybody because I've been off of Instagram. That's how I keep in touch with people. And so when that happened, I went on Substack, and there's a lot of really good content there. And I think when I'm going to start writing again, I'm going to put it on Substack.
I like the fact that blogging and writing articles is starting to come back. I personally am more of a visual learner. YouTube, I love YouTube. Like, I don't even really listen to music in my car. I'm just listening to podcast, or if I'm listening to something, like I'll just put YouTube on, not watch it, like just listen to it. But I do like the fact that blogging is coming back per se. Now, blogging, I feel like, became more for SEO. And it was more like, hey, make sure you put a blog up, because that way Google will recognize that you're talking about Bronx real estate or whatever it may be. But now the thought-provoking articles, I do enjoy that. Are you seeing a transition back to blogging as well?
Well, so Substack is gaining a lot of popularity. I think from the content creator standpoint, I think people find it nice to write. They like to get their thoughts out, and they like to write and be creative through that modality. Not everyone does, but some people do. I think there's a lot of competition in the podcasting space. There's so many out there now that people are experiencing some fatigue from those, and maybe they are going back to more of the writing. And then I think with these LLMs today, look, similar to SEO, they're grabbing content from somewhere. And, if they're going to, the OpenAI did a deal, I think, with the New York Times. Like, they're looking for places to bring content in from. And if they're doing it from Substack and you're active there, I think that only benefits people.
Are you seeing in the AI world, and you mentioned LLMs, which for those of you who don't know is, large language models?
Yep.
That's the AIs, that's the Claudes, the ChatGPTs, that they're now pulling their references from blogs, YouTube, and all these different sources. So people are now running to that.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're seeing a lot of?
So yes, I think that's how the LLMs work. They're pulling content from anywhere they could get content from.
Which is scary to a degree, because you don't know if they're pulling content from blogs that were written by some AIs.
Correct. And that's exactly what's happening, right? A lot of the people who are writing today are using AI to do that. And there are some things that you can do. There's, instead of SEO now, it's GEO. I'm not even sure exactly what the G stands for, but it helps influence how you or your brand might be appearing on an LLM. Today, there's not a great path to go to an OpenAI and say, hey, if you look me up on Claude, the information's inaccurate. But that will change. They're starting to advertise now. So I was using Gemini yesterday. And maybe it was OpenAI, but I was using one of the large language models, and I was putting in Tommy's workouts, because Tommy's workouts are always like, all right, run 1,000 meters at this pace, and I'm trying to do the math in my head, and I can't figure it out. So I put it in there. Next thing you know, advertisement for New Balance shoes comes up right underneath it. So they're starting to make those strides into more of a performance-based ad platform.
But I imagine you're using a paid version of the LLM, or are you using a free version that you're getting the ads?
So OpenAI, I'm not using a paid version. Gemini and Claude, I have paid versions for.
Gotcha. Forgive me for the dumb question, but OpenAI is what?
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
Yes,
okay.
Sorry.
You're using the... Yeah, so ChatGPT, I use the paid version, and just more recently, only because it's been flooding my algorithm, Claude.
Yeah.
And more so, Claude, not from the chat feature, but the co-work feature. And now that I've gotten into the co-work feature, it's like, wait a second, code could do this.
Yes.
And like, what really got me was, I'll type in like Claude for realtors and watch these case studies, and learning how to use this and learning how to implement it in my business helps me tremendously.
Oh yeah. We use Claude at work. I have not done a PowerPoint in like 4 months.
Oh boy, yeah.
And it's incredible.
Yeah.
And, I've gotten to the point now where I can just talk to the microphone and edit the PowerPoint with Claude. And it's tremendous technology. What they did focusing on coding and that co-work product is obviously very smart, because their revenue is through the roof right now. But that's definitely changed the way that I've worked. And again, if you're an individual person, you used to have to hire a designer to do that stuff. Now you can do it yourself.
It's amazing. To your point, right? Like I was using, I was introduced to Notebook LM. Are you familiar with Notebook LM?
No.
So it's a Google product. So if you have a Gmail account, you get Notebook LM for free. And you basically create these notebooks, right? So I'll create a notebook and I'll call it whatever, Padernacht Podcast. And I just upload sources. So you upload articles, whatever, maybe documents, articles, whatever, even just text. And then what it does is you click a button and it becomes a PowerPoint deck. It could become a quiz. It could make a video for you about your content. It could create a podcast. It's absolutely amazing, and it's free. And I saw a video the other day of somebody using Notebook LM and using Claude together to create these ridiculous PowerPoints and these ridiculous sort of things. It's like the future is just happening so fast. And I feel like when the internet came, people were probably saying the same thing. And you have those folks that are kind of like my mom these days, who like still doesn't know how to DVR a show. And there's going to be some people that just get left behind, and there's going to be some people that just adapt. And I feel like you and I are both people that are going to adapt and ride the wave and just kind of use it to become more efficient. Because if not, we're just going to get left behind.
For sure. And it's interesting because we're exactly how you just described. So there are days when I'm like, wow, the world is passing me by because there's so much info out there. The models are changing. There's so many different tools out there. And I'm like, I'm falling behind on this. And then you realize that 80% of the world is still not using them at all. And then you're like, oh, all right, no, I'm on the cutting edge of it. I'm not in the top 5% maybe, and I'm working my way towards that. But it is interesting to see. You know, we kind of just missed that internet wave and bubble, but this definitely feels like our version of it.
I definitely agree. I remember the internet. Like, I remember when it was dial-up, right? So I got you by a couple years, right? So like, I remember I used to have to unplug my parents' house phone
jack,
to plug in AOL, and I had an AIM name. And then like if my dad was trying to call, because this is before even like call waiting, like it was just that technology like was so advanced at the time. And now where we are today, I could only imagine where we're going to be in 10 years.
You don't have to share it, but I bet you had a fire AIM name.
My AIM name was Sedgy, SEDG 209, Sedgy 209. There you go. Because I grew up on Sedgwick Avenue.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it was just like a nickname. My roommate had some crazy name. I forgot his fucking name, but my friends used to always make fun of it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, my friends had some crazy ones. And then we used to joke about the girls who AIM name would be uppercase and lowercase letters. Like that was very popular back then. But
those chat rooms were wild, man.
Totally wild.
Like just freedom.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting? I was watching something the other day, and they were talking about the Jetsons, and they were talking about how the Jetsons had FaceTime.
Yeah.
But we didn't forget, like, all the technology that we have right now, people are saying, like, they had this 15, 20 years ago, but they were using it. And when I use the word they, I'm being very, like, who the hell knows who they are? Military, government, whatever it is. Like, so they're rolling it out to us now. Like it must have been in existence long ago.
Right, yeah. It's crazy how spot on some of those things were with the Jetsons and some of the early stuff. But the AI stuff is interesting to predict how it's going to impact the broader future. One area that I've been paying attention to, because my wife is a former teacher. She taught third grade for much of her life, and now she does private tutoring and some consulting in that space. And her specialty is working with children who have language-based learning disabilities, so kids who have dyslexia for the most part. And it's amazing, you know, I've seen through her the progress these kids have been made in being able to read because of the one-on-one, you know, attention that they get when they work with a tutor. And it's not the cheapest thing in the world, and it's not easy to find a good one, but the progress is incredible. So there's a school down in Texas, and I'm sure you'll see good and bad things about it, but it's called Alpha School. I was just down in Austin for business, and they were talking about it. And this school basically flips education upside down. And so what they have is it's basically one teacher for every 1 to 2 students. The students spend basically 1 to 2 hours a day in an actual classroom setting. The rest is either doing projects or outside and doing things like that. And their learning mechanism, let's say they each have an iPad, it's got AI running on it where the lesson plan is tailored completely to them.
Wow.
And so if you think about the average classroom today, let's say there's 20 kids in it. Well, 5 of them are bored because they already know what the teacher is talking about. Way too advanced. 5 of them are totally lost because it's just, you know, they don't get it at all. And 10 are like me, somewhere in the middle. Like you're bored, but you kind of get what's going on. And what they're saying is that, you know, with AI now, every student can be taught at the level that they are at and focusing on the strengths that they have, as opposed to, you know, oh, we're teaching you this because there's a standardized test at the end of the year and everyone needs to pass that or else. And that's basically how we're running our schools today. So I think that's one area, education, where, you know, AI could have a big impact. Obviously, there's going to be hurdles to change the way that we educate, but it would be cool to see. I expect we'll see more of those things starting up.
I do. I that is such an interesting model because I remember transferring from public school to private school, and I remember when I transferred, like I was learning stuff and this is 5th grade, but like I'm learning stuff in 5th grade that I learned in 4th grade in the public schools, and my mom thought she was putting me into a better school, but I'm like, Ma, I learned this already last year. Like I'm bored, and there was nothing. So that school is a very interesting. I would imagine that this is not like a public school. This is probably like a private institution and probably cost a pretty penny.
It's a private business. I don't know about the cost, and the people I was talking to there, live in the area, so they had some experience with it. And in some cases, it just didn't work for the kids. In other cases, the kids made tremendous strides and they were raving about it. So like anything else, it's going to be hit or miss. But I think about my son who's 4 and he's going to be going to kindergarten, not this year, but the next year. He's going to be like me. I didn't want to be sitting in a chair for 6 hours a day and putting my head down when, there needs to be quiet time. I needed freedom to run around and be a boy and do some of those things. And unfortunately, when that's the case early on, you start to get in your mind an idea of what school is. And it doesn't have to be like that. Like people can be excited about school and learning and education. And one of the case studies with the school that I heard on podcast was that many of the kids actually decided to not stay in school, but continue the program over the summer when everybody else is like, how many days till summer so we can get out of here? That's certainly how I would. But they enjoyed what they were doing. And they were doing things like, they had 3 students who were managing a food truck, and that was their, project. And they were learning math and business and economics and things through that. You and I would have thrived with that back in the day.
Like I think about like what you're explaining to me, and I'm saying to myself, like, I was so bored in school. I hated it. The only thing that I really enjoyed in school was history class. Like, it was the only thing that really I enjoyed. Everything else I friggin' hated. I hated English class. I hated math. I hated school overall. Like I was intelligent. I'm intelligent, but I hated it. So I was just your average C student. Right. I did enough just to get by. In high school, my mom, it was like, you never got honors. So I got honors one semester so I can give her the honor certificate. Like, look, Ma, I did it, but I hated it.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, you could have turned it on whenever you wanted to. And I was the same way. And, it was because I wasn't interested in it. I don't think I had any subject that I really liked. But the social aspects of it always gravitated towards me. And I don't want to, there's a movement for homeschooling and I get that. But at the same time, I made so many friends, and I'm that guy. Like I'm friends with my friends from grammar school. I'm friends with my friends from high school, and I wouldn't change that for the world.
The social aspect, I think, is probably the most important. And it's a shame, and we're kind of going from AI to education. But the one thing that bothers me about education is that college is so damn expensive. And the most important thing about college is, I think, twofold. And I don't remember where I heard this, but they said that proving to an employer that you could do something for 4 years and finish. And number 2, the social aspect of living on your own and doing your own laundry and doing your, whatever, making sure you eat every night. Yeah. Those little things, if you look at your average college student that goes away compared to stays at home, it's leaps and bounds when it comes to the responsibility aspect. Yeah. And it's a shame that it's so expensive.
Well, and I hope it swings back. I think if you look at the history of that, it was once the federal government started offering loans to go to school that the schools just kept raising the prices, and shame on them for doing that and taking advantage of that, because now you have a lot of kids we have friends our age who are still in student loan debt and will likely never get out of it. Today, though, we're seeing more and more people going back into the trades, which was, 20 years ago, we had kids at my high school who would go into BOCES, and people were like, well, why? And they learned welding, they learned a trade skill, they learned HVAC. And now that those roles are in such demand, and those businesses are doing very well, that there seems to be a swing back. And I just wonder, again, my daughter's 6, what does college look like for her? Is it still going to be that expensive? And if so, what relationship do we want to have with that? Do we want to help pay for it? Do we want to encourage her to go in a different direction? I guess you just wait and see, but it's something I think about.
I think a lot of it's going to depend on her personality when she's 15, 16, 17 years old. And you kind of see, you'll know your kid at that point, like what will serve her best. And I think that allowing children to make a decision at that age, but as long as it's a responsible decision. You can't just tell me like I'm not going to school. All right, you're not going to school, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like I'd rather go do this. I'd rather go do that. Like I would be okay with that, but the more you force, you know, like what's the expression? Forcing a square peg into a round hole. You're just going to create friction. And college, by the time you're sending your kids to college, it's going to be a couple $100,000, you know, to do so. And granted, you know, whether or not you're taking out loans or whatever the case may be, you are right. It's a shame that what they've done to colleges. And it's like the same colleges that are, the same institutions that are raising the prices are also setting the education standards. It just doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't. And I have a few friends who are professors. Like they're not getting any of that money. They're still getting paid peanuts, unfortunately. But the schools are getting wealthier and wealthier. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Now, are you still involved with alumni from Fairfield? Like, are you involved in the alumni aspect of it?
Not in the alumni organization itself, more just with the alumni.
Your friends.
Yeah, exactly. But outside of that, even, you know, I've met people, again, kind of connecting on LinkedIn. Oh, if I'm selling to a company, one of the first things I'm looking on LinkedIn is if anyone at that company went to Fairfield, and I'm reaching out to them as a, you know, alumni and seeing if I can make that connection. And many of them are willing to do that. So that's really the extent of it. I get the invite to different events and things, and maybe I will get more involved in that at some point, but I have not yet.
Now, you're selling to major companies. I think I noticed on your bio that Fortune 100 companies.
Yeah.
So for those listeners out there, explain what Fortune 100 companies are and how you're able to sell to those companies.
Yeah, so I mean, Fortune 100 is just the top 100 companies based on market size.
So we're talking like what?
Well, we sell into financial services, so we're talking like top 10 banks. So
JP Morgan, Bank of America.
Yep. Yeah, Wells, Citi, all of those companies would be great targets for ours. Some of them we work with, but yeah, so it's interesting. Our sales cycles are long. You're talking 9 to 12 months, which is very different. Although I know in the real estate space, right, you could be looking with someone for that amount of time. We are not just selling to a business buyer, but we're also selling into procurement, which is, you know, if you're not familiar, it's the group of people at an organization that are responsible for the software and vendors that they're bringing on. So they're looking at the contract, they're looking at the cost, they're looking at all the liabilities. They're basically there to beat you up. We are their punching bag a lot of times. You're selling to in the case of technology, you're sending to their third-party risk team, the team that's looking at your technology and saying, hey, is this gonna blow up what we're doing here? Is this gonna add additional risk to our business? So you have to be well-versed in a lot of areas. It truly is enterprise sales. You are the quarterback. I'm the quarterback. My team is the quarterback of a team of people who would go into a process like this and you know, really lead it forward. But yeah, it's not easy.
But you're dealing with companies that are the top 100 in the entire country.
Yep.
For the most part. So it's not like you're able to, like, what happens when you run outside that 100? Like, do you then start expanding? Like, how do you pick, like, who's your target audience?
Yeah, so in us, you know, we call it our ICP. It's your ideal customer profile.
Okay.
And it's financial services companies that are over a certain amount of revenue or over a certain amount of assets under management. If it's a bank, it's usually 10 to 50 billion in assets under management. You know, for us, unfortunately, there's still some of those top 50 that we don't work with today. So there are top targets, but you also build out what we would say is our total addressable market outside of that. So, all right, who are the next 200 accounts? Now, the sales process to them is different than the top 50 accounts, and you need to build that motion too. Sometimes you have different salespeople. You certainly have different processes. The forecast is different. Those deals move faster. They're smaller deals.
Yeah.
And then you go into maybe other industries. So today we sell into financial services largely. There might be a day where we sell into insurance. And so those are the things that as a CRO you're thinking about, you're being strategic. Those are the things investors want to hear about. They always ask that question. Well, what's your addressable market? How big can it get? Because they want to see the big picture and what their exit could be in the future. So certainly things to think about. But I will say for anyone who's starting and running a business, that ICP conversation is the most important one. You want to start with the right buyers and not get too wide too fast. That was one of the challenges that we had at Silverback at the agency was that, you know, we tried to do everything for everybody because we were looking to make money and we were starting a business and we were starting to hire people. But to have really focused in on a certain segment early on probably would have benefited us.
You know, it's interesting. So like, as I'm hearing you talk, it sounds very corporate, right? But so for me, we talk about your client avatar.
Oh yeah.
And it's the same concept.
Same thing. Yep.
Same concept. Like, who is it? Like, so, you know, like for me, I like to help first-time home buyers, right? And ideally, first-time home buyers that have the 10 to 15% down. Usually the average income is anywhere from like, you know, $100,000 to $150,000 a year. Credit scores above 700. It's the same exact thing.
For sure.
And that's the beautiful thing I think about business is that no matter where you are, if you're selling the Fortune 100s or you're selling in the Bronx, it's the same ideas, just explained a little bit differently.
For sure. And that's one of the nice things about being in a world where there's so much content out there. I could have my sales team listen to your podcast and they're going to learn stuff about selling software to banks. And it might not be the same language to your point, but the skill set is the same. I learn things from people in the real estate industry all the time. Relationships is such a big one in your space. It's the same here. You know, patience is such a big one in your space. I remember when we were buying our house, it was 2023. It was very much the, you're getting multiple bids over ask in the first 24 hours, best and final. You need to make some concessions. And I've only done this once. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm about to write the biggest check of my life. I'm not making concessions on anything. I want to get this place inspected. I'm not waiving anything. And we had an agent that we worked with here in Connecticut she just totally got it. And she made us feel good through the whole process, even when it was frustrating, even when we thought we were never going to find something. And, you know, whether you're in enterprise sales or you're an accountant or you're in anything, when you're servicing and working with people, you need to build that relationship and you need to be able to do that. And that's why your people skills are so top notch that the people that you work with, they can learn that from you. They're going to be successful in real estate.
It's all, and just to add on to that, business is still all about lead generation. It's still all about, like, as you just said, like, what is it called? The addressable market? What is it?
Yeah, total addressable market.
There it is. See, like for me, it's all about, it's the same concept. And generating leads every single day and making sure that if you don't have clients that are coming in the pipeline, you know, the investors are looking at what the exit could be. In business, it's like, okay, so where's the next deal coming from?
Right.
And, you know, operating without a safety net and being able to be an entrepreneur and saying to yourself, like, you know what, if this shit's got to work. You know, I have on my laptop here, it says burn the boats. You know, and Pat D talks about that all the time, right? Like you got to burn the boats. And it's scary, man. It's really scary to be out here and not have that security, but it's also a beautiful thing. It's freedom, it's bliss. And you just got to get good at it. And not a lot of people could do it.
For sure. Yeah, it's not for everybody. You know, I think about when I transitioned to the company that I'm at now, I was very much trying to prove myself. They didn't know me at all. I didn't have any experience in the industry. And my wife will tell you for, you know, the first 5 or 6 years of our marriage, I'm working every weekend. There are 2, 3, 4 hours a weekend that I'm working. And what do you think I'm doing? I'm prospecting. Because my week is meetings and it's selling and it's demos, but I'm always trying to fill that pipeline. I'm reaching out to people. I'm trying to send 100 messages a day. I'm going through and organizing myself so my week can be more productive. And so I've talked about this a bunch, but there's a concept called being an intrapreneur. Pat David talks about it. He wrote a book about it. And that's really where you are acting as an owner, but within an organization. And it typically comes where you have some sort of equity. So you do have an ownership stake in the organization. So my experience is on the earlier stage side where I do have equity in the business that I'm in, and I've grown that equity over time, but I've always treated it as a business owner. So that burn the boats mentality, it's the same thing even if you're at a company. If you think that way and act that way, you will likely grow. I've had 5 or 6 promotions in 8 years there, and that's not common. But when you're operating the way you're talking about, it actually becomes more common because the owner, the private equity team, the board, they see that and they say, all right, well, we want to keep this person here because of the way they're working.
And I think that to your credit, those promotions happened because you're not necessarily banking on that secure salary. You're like, hey, wait a second, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep building because who knows, sky's the limit. You're working with the fund that has, I don't want to say unlimited funds, but they can really take care of you. So you're just like, you know what, I'm gonna take this net that I have, but I'm gonna blow it out of the water and really kind of show what I could do.
For sure. And if you're in the software space, and you get an investment from a private equity company, to me, the second they invested money into our business, it became an audition, because one day, they have, this particular company has, 20 to 30 companies that they manage right now. If they like me, they could put me in as the CRO in another business, or the CEO in another business, or they can connect me to another company that they're investing in. And so, that concept of you can never get complacent. Again, yes, it's nice to have the salary, and it's nice to have the healthcare and some of the stuff that you don't have as a business owner. There's some consistency there. But I've always just operated that way, where you never know what tomorrow is going to bring, and you need to kind of leave it all out there.
Think about the flip side of that. They could it's an audition for something great, but it also could, if they see that you're complacent, they could also just fire you.
Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time. The average tenure for a VP of sales and software is 18 months.
Yeah.
And more often than not, it's this sort of mismatch of bringing someone in based on a resume and a couple of interviews, and that person, for whatever reason, not meeting expectations. Sometimes it's the expectations that are off to begin with. And so it becomes this revolving door in the case of a lot of companies. And that process sets companies back tremendously. If you're turning over your leadership every 18 months, and then you're spending another 6 months to hire, and you're spending good money on these people. And so I think, I've always thought, hey, if you can make an impression and do right by people in your performance, that's going to go a long way.
What do you envision for your kids as they get older, and what do you envision for them to be? Entrepreneurs? What would bring you the most joy for them as adults and throughout their lifetime?
Yeah. I mean, I just, as a parent, you just want them to be happy. You also want them to be able to deal with adversity and be confident. And unfortunately, like, they're going to have to do some of those things on their own. And so I think the approach that my wife and I take is that we want to model, the best behavior we can. We want them to see us around a lot. We were very blessed. One of our early goals was that my wife could stay home with the kids when we started having them, and she's been able to do that. We're surrounded by family. We want them to know that, their home, our home, is a place they can always come to. They can always tell us anything. We'll figure it out together. And our hope is that they're going to have opportunities to find things they really like. One way or another, they're going to learn how to create income and how to deliver value, because that's how you create income. And we hope that they'll point that in the direction of, something that they like to do, and they'll do it successfully. But being a parent's super hard. It's one of the hardest things we've ever done. It's scary these days, right? You can't go on Instagram without seeing, horror stories about one thing or another with kids. And so, for us, my wife and I, like, these years, we just try to lock in. And I think that goes back to the people you spend your time with as well. I've made some life decisions now that I've had kids around, just for me the last year, like not drinking and things like that. Not for any reason that I had any issues with it, but because it allows me to be a better parent and to think more clearly and to not have to question, hey, did I have a drink or two and now I'm going to get in the car and drive someplace, and what could that lead to? I just want to be on top of my game so that I could be on my game for them. With that being said, like, do I get stuck in traffic and let out a curse sometimes and my kids hear it and then my son's like, what the F? Yeah, that certainly happens too. And, we'll have some fun with it. I know we did growing up, being in a family environment, but those are the things that are important to us.
Well, I heard something a long time ago that loving parents are perfectly imperfect. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have the moments. Yeah. I think what you said was super important, setting the example and letting them just see what a loving household is, what loving parents feel like, and that they're happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're quick to apologize. Like, if I lose my temper, because, the hardest thing for me, to be honest, is that it's a blessing because I work from home 4 days of work, but the kids don't know that I am at work.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Daddy's home.
5 o'clock comes and it's like a context switch where I need to go from negotiating with a big bank or stress from a board meeting or something like that to a parent like this. Mm-hmm. And it just doesn't work that way. Plus, my phone's still going off and I'm still getting messages on Slack after 5 o'clock and people need things. And my wife's had the kids all day. And so she's like, all right, daddy's here. And she does a good job of running interference, but those are the times where I find myself, with the least patience, and I'll just go to my son or daughter later on in the day and I'll be like, hey, sorry, like daddy was having a hard time transitioning out of work and I shouldn't have done X, Y, Z. And you know what? They get it. And sometimes they'll apologize when they lose their cool on different things for whatever reason. And being perfectly imperfect, how you described it, that's it.
The fact that you apologize to them leads them for the example that they're able to apologize back to you. And that sort of chemistry is not necessarily one that you can talk about. You have to actually do it.
Yeah, right. Exactly right. Yeah, show them that it's okay to,
Yeah. Being able to apologize when you're genuinely wrong, even when you're not wrong. I mean, that ability, I learned that in the service business, obviously, apologizing for something that wasn't I'm so sorry that your dish came out late. I'm so sorry when it wasn't my fault at all. But being able to apologize and I guess what it really comes down to is swallow your pride.
Yeah.
Knowing that being able to do that is such an underrated quality. And I feel like in society today, a lot of people don't have that. And it's genuinely sad, but the fact that you're able to do that with your kids and they're reciprocating it is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. It's just part of the world we put ourselves in with the constant, personal development and growth. I try to listen to, podcasts about parenting because I find hearing other people's stories is a good educator in that space. Sometimes it also scares me a little bit too, because you hear about, as kids get older and the challenges get bigger and the questions and those sorts of things. But I think overall being informed is probably a good thing. And I try to, there's a lot of dads that I know that I respect quite a bit and I lean on them for guidance. In the ACE dinners, when we have breakouts and I get to be in front of you and others who have kids who are a little bit older than our kids, their perspective is really helpful.
Yeah, it's interesting because like when I got married, my wife had 3 children. So like I came into the family with a 17-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 10-year-old. So like I didn't get the baby years, but I went directly into boyfriends, girlfriends, driving, drinking. Like I went directly into like the the after school specials. It was definitely something to that you had to be there for.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember you brought your son to one of the dinners one night.
Yes, Elijah, yep.
And I just think to myself when I see either kids who are younger or the father-son combo at a dinner, like what an incredible gift you're giving them, even if they don't come back, just to see that, hey, these are the kind of people that you're hanging out with. These are the kind of conversations that are happening. There is a safe space. You don't need to keep everything in. Like that's the one thing I'll say, about my dad growing up is he came from a generation where you didn't talk about feelings
same thing my pops,
at all.
Yeah.
And we did not have those conversations. My dad is a really good writer, which I think is why he gave me those notes before, my jobs and things like that. That was him sharing feelings in a way that he wouldn't necessarily in a one-on-one conversation. But for the next generation, especially with pressures of social media and all these other things, to know that it's now becoming cool to be a guy who's vulnerable and share. I think that's why Dave and Sean's message really resonated with me.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. And again, just going back to what we had talked about on the text where it's like our fathers were huge influences. Dude, my father would write everything. Like literally, like it was always writing. So before he passed, he had to get a tracheotomy and he would write. So he lost his voice. He couldn't talk. So for the last 6 months that he was live, he would write. Those letters that he gave me, I have a folder like this thick full of all of the writings that he did in the last 6 months of his life. And going back to that is the equivalent of like you're looking at those letters that you have up in your office. It's the same thing. And and seeing like the actual handwriting.
Yeah.
Like on like the paper that's like wrinkled, like it just, there's something to it that this generation just doesn't necessarily have. And the fact that you and I both share a very similar background, it's just makes this conversation so much easier.
For sure.
There's a question that I ask every single person that sits in this chair, and I'm sure you've probably heard it because you said you've been listening to some of the podcasts. Long after you're gone, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people to say about you?
Yeah, I mean, I just want people to say that he was a good husband, a good father. I think right now that's the priority for me. I want my kids to grow up in an environment where, they know that they're loved and that they have people that they can count on and that people who are going to encourage them no matter what. And I think the relationship I have with my wife is the catalyst for that, right? They need to see that mom and dad are in love with each other and are on the same page with things and support one another. That's ultimately, and I'm not perfect with this, right? This is something that I work on quite a bit. But when I'm not here anymore, I want people to see that in my kids, and they're our best legacy right now. Yeah, one day I could have a huge company and I can, do more content, and hopefully there will be some good stuff out there, even like this podcast that people can learn from and listen to. But ultimately, those children are going to be, my son's got my name, right? So he's carrying on that legacy one way or another. You're going to Google John Zanzarella one day, and my dad and I aren't going to come up. My son's going to come up, and I hope it's for something good. But yeah, that's really what we want to leave behind. We want to not put pressure on them, but we want to empower them to go and be great.
Is your dad a John also?
Yeah, and my grandfather. So
you're the third.
We started doing different middle names. My dad is John Anthony. Okay. I'm John Thomas, and the Thomas is after my mother's father.
Okay.
And then my son, same thing. He's John Henry, and the Henry is after my wife's grandfather.
Gotcha. So you don't do the junior, the third.
Correct. Yeah, we've avoided that part of it, but we've stuck with the Johns.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That legacy right there is the most important thing. Yeah. And you're right. You're going to Google John Zanzarella one day, and you're going to see your son up there making such impact on the world.
That's the plan.
And that starts with you and your wife at home. Yeah. Thank you so much, dude, for being here.
Thank you, man. This was so fun.
Yeah, dude, this was awesome.
It's like 2 microphones in the sauna when we're hanging out having these conversations.
Yeah, man. I can't stress the comfort level of just being here with somebody that you know and somebody that you appreciate hanging out with. So thank you so much.
Yeah, right back at you. I appreciate you having me.
All right, and this has been another episode of the Padernacht podcast. John, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch with you if they want to learn a little bit more about what you got going on?
Yeah, just connect with me on LinkedIn, John Zanzarella. Would love to talk, have one of those random meetings that we talked about. Yeah. Happy to answer any questions and see if I can be helpful in any way.
My man, appreciate you.
You got it.
All right, take care, guys. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you guys next week.